Hello, everyone, and welcome to Seriously Loco, the Seriously Crazy fan podcast for El Paso Locomotive FC. I'm Phil Bakke, and I am joined today by Mika Burrell. And Mika, season 8 years of doing this show, feels kind of surreal. I'm not gonna lie.
That's crazy. 8 seasons. Dude, you could round that up to a decade. That's wild. Yeah, wow, amazing. I know we fell off. I know, big elephant in the room, obviously. We really fell off last season.
It's there.
Burnout happens to all of us, but I am happy to be back. And back in the new year. Happy 2026 to everyone who's listening. To you as well, Phil. So, yeah, happy to be on the mics.
Yeah, happy New Year as well. To anyone who is wondering what happened, I think we sort of addressed it online, but the idea, is simply a lot occurred. There was medical stuff, there was babies, there was the whole nine, and travel, work, all of the typical excuses. That being said, we have ideas about how to make sure that we maintain momentum even if the season slog is getting to us. So anyways, we're hoping that we'll be able to carry through, New Year's resolution. We carry through a little bit more longer into this year. And there's a lot going on at Locomotive that hopefully is going to keep us engaged in a more positive way with the team, because I don't think that anybody listening to this will find it weird for us to say that we've been feeling just disengaged. And I think, I don't think it would come as a surprise. We've been feeling disengaged from the club to a certain extent anyways. And hopefully we're due for some more. We're obviously going to spend today talking about a ton of news going on around the club and USL. We'll chat a little bit about the CBA and the potential looming lockout. The other elephant in the room is, will the USL 2026 season occur? But we've also got big news around the club: new manager, a couple of new players, new president / GM, and a lot to talk about. But all that being said, Mika, season wrapped up in October. Pittsburgh Riverhounds, the champions of the USL Championship, which always feels a little bit wonky to say. But since October, I guess, how have you been? How are you holding up? How was the holidays? And I guess, what are you looking forward to in 2026?
Yeah, wow, Pittsburgh go home with the trophy. A Bob Lilly-less Pittsburgh, if you can believe it. So yeah, congratulations to them. The East is beast again. The off season has been good. It's gone by very quickly. I mean, we're sitting here in January 2026. What even is that? I mean, you said it at the, just now. There's been so much that's going on. Me personally, I had my first ever surgery in September, and that was a major surgery. I'm good. I'm fine now. But so that was something that took me out of commission for a month and a half. And then right after that, I sold my house. So I don't know what we were thinking, doing that at that same time, but we did. We closed in December. And so I'm sitting here in a rented townhome, waiting for our new house to be built. So there's been a lot going on, a lot of change. Today I had to figure out how to set up my podcast, my studio again, for this. But I mean, I'm happy to be back, obviously. And I do feel re-energized. Like you said, there's been a lot of changes at the club, and I think that, a little bit of novelty is good. Whether that ends up being good or bad, obviously we'll see. Only time will tell us, but at least we have some new personnel, new ideas to dig into. And I do feel re-energized. And actually, I've never been one for and this is just personally speaking, I've never been one for New Year's resolutions, but I actually am doing some this year. So I don't know, I'm just feeling overall more motivated and ready to go. So I don't know, do you share that? How are you feeling about everything?
Yeah, I feel pretty good headed into the new year. I think a combination of like taking some time off around the holidays and kind of decompressing a little bit from what has been like a quite crazy work period. And I will say, like, one of the things that I do find difficult is when work stress gets really high, it's really tough to like then push into, like, even though this is something that in theory should be like fun and a bit of decompression in and of itself, the idea of like, you know, navigating all that work stress and then coming back and being like, okay, we got to record and we got to post the podcast and we got to like do the cover art and the whatever, like, and it's just like all this stuff that just becomes like quite overwhelming. And I think like getting back to this as a outlet versus like a chore is like something, and like something I've just been like thinking about, because ultimately I just like chatting soccer with you guys and I want to keep doing it, so
100%,
that's continuing to see it as something that is not something that we do because we have to, but because we want to. And that's ultimately I think like a helpful mindset shift, and hopefully I'm feeling good about the new season. I mean, that being said, the looming question is the CBA. And so the USL Players Association and USL signed the inaugural CBA, I think in 2022. I don't have the figures up in front of me, but I think it's been active for 3 years. And it was essentially this like introductory CBA that was, hey, you're now collectively bargaining for the players, and like a real CBA will come at sort of the expiration of this inaugural CBA, which, set like a floor, like a contract floor and some very, very basic stuff. This season, the CBA expires. The players have been very vocal about the fact that they're after some very kind of, I guess, what you would call like basic things like health insurance, guaranteed health insurance, year-long contracts instead of season-long contracts. As we know, the USL runs March to October. They want the contracts to cover the length of the whole year rather than the length of just a season. And some salary minimum adjustments, all that sort of stuff, in protecting the players. And the reality is that in negotiation and collective bargaining with the owners, they have not been able to find common ground yet. And as of 2 days ago, midnight on the 31st, the CBA expired. And so we are technically now in a strike, lockout, I guess, whatever you want to call it. It doesn't matter right now, obviously. In the offseason, in the strictest sense, players are still signing contracts. There's still movement in the market, all that sort of stuff. But if things don't change between now and March, players won't take the field in the USL Championship. And so obviously, Mika, given just the fact that everything kind of hinges on something getting done here, I was curious just your thoughts overall on like the player's position, the owner's position, and then where you kind of see this going. And if you think like it's more likely that a deal gets done or not before March.
Well, first of all, let me just say that the whole idea of the words you use, strike or lockout, is very unpalatable to me, and it brings up a very, this story because I've told it to you. I don't know if I've told it on the pod, but in my younger sports journalism days as a college student, I was interviewing someone who is now a commissioner of a major soccer league. I won't say any names, but I brought up the then NHL, the National Hockey League lockout, and I used the word lockout, and they very swiftly reminded me it's not a lockout, it's a work stoppage. So
right.
And that's obviously from the perspective of that league, right? But obviously from the perspective of players, it could be a lockout, could be a strike. But anyways, it's just the whole idea of that always brings me back to that of like, oh my God, that person like completely called me out right on the spot. I'm just like this stupid 19-year-old. No, but as for USL and the collective bargaining agreement, which did expire a few days ago, I personally have hope that they will come to some kind of agreement. Maybe not a full, like, comprehensive collective bargaining agreement, or maybe they won't get everything they want necessarily in this first round. But I am hopeful they'll come to something because I feel like USL is on the precipice of like something really big. I mean, we've had, promotion and relegation mooted. More eyes are on this league. More talent is being identified in this league and making impacts at the highest levels, e.g. Diego Luna. And so I feel like USL, it would really behoove them to get something done with the players because the interest is extremely high right now, relatively speaking, of course. And then with the 2026 World Cup, which we are hosting as one of the host nations, if you want to, remain relevant on the world stage or, try to continue building that relevancy, I might say instead, you got to get something done because we got to play. And so I am hopeful that will happen. And ultimately, at the end of the day, too, I think the players are very motivated and they want to play. They don't want to lose a season. There are a lot of internationals, in this league. Maybe not all of them are going to be at the World Cup with their nations, but still, a lot of them also want to showcase what they can do with, maybe more scouts are going to be out here because of the World Cup, whatever. I mean, there's knock-on effects everywhere you look. So I do think that it would behoove both parties, but especially the league to come to some kind of agreement with the players. And I mean, have we actually seen any reporting about like an actual work stoppage, or is it just like technically right now we don't have a collective bargaining agreement in place, but I suppose they could still go back to what it was before that. Obviously, no one wants to see that happen, but have we seen any kind of actual work stoppage being like mooted?
I haven't seen any reporting that is like there is a work stoppage.
Mm-hmm.
The Players Association has talked about the fact that if there's not a CBA in place, there will be a work stoppage.
Okay.
But it's all been very hypothetical up to this point. And they didn't treat, I don't think the Players Association treated, New Year's Eve as like a doomsday clock of any sort. I think they're choosing to allow it to breathe a little bit. And then I would imagine the pressure as we like get later into January and into February, like I think they're, and players start reporting for preseason and stuff like that. Yeah, that's when I do think it's going to start to get a little messy, because I do think that there will be players that like if the union starts telling players like, hey, stop showing up for practice and stuff, it's gonna be that's gonna be where it gets a lot tougher for the league to continue, I guess.
Well, what do you make of the demands of the players?
Yeah, I think the one that they've really harped on this offseason has been the health insurance. And I do think, as most like people in America that are insured not on like a government plan like Medicare, Medicaid, or, maybe Marketplace, I guess, a majority of Americans are insured through employer provided health coverage. Like I would say that makes up a vast majority of insured people in the country. And so to me, the idea that these clubs are likely providing employer provided healthcare to their like front office staff and stuff like that, but not the technical, like not the playing stat. Like that to me, it's like they're employees of the same entity. They should be entitled to the same benefits, particularly when you consider the physical nature of the job. Like if, you know, if a construction company was insuring their office staff and not the construction workers, like that would be weird. Mm-hmm. And probably probably the basis for some sort of like labor action. So to me, I think the healthcare idea is, you know, I think that's fundamental, and I think that the players are right to point to that as something that they deserve as employees of these clubs that are, you know, professional sports teams. Where I think they are gonna, I mean, they're almost certainly gonna have to give ground is on either like salaries or how you account for compensation other than wages. Because I do think that there are a lot of clubs that are like, hey, we're gonna like pay you a certain amount and we're going to like subsidize your housing costs or something like that. Or we're going to like put you up in apartments or whatever. Like, I think that's an area where if the union is saying like, no, this needs to be the minimum salary and you can't count housing costs or meal costs or anything like that, like towards that I think is going to be a sticking point, because it does quickly add up if it's like, hey, our base wages need to go up and you can't count these other expenses, which many clubs do leverage. Like, I mean, I think it's an open secret that Locomotive, does housing deals essentially, like for a lot of their players, and puts them up in certain apartment complexes. And that being counted as compensation, I think is fair. Like, I think the club would be, I think it would be fair for them to count that as part of the overall compensation package. So yeah, it's a bit, it's sticky. I think the reality is like, for anyone who knows me, like I'll never be on the side of paying people less money for their labor or anything like that, because I do think that there's there's a genuine benefit in that. And I think the idea that these guys work extremely hard in extremely like uncertain conditions on like 1-year contracts in a sport that can threaten your long-term like physical health, all that sort of stuff, there's a lot of considerations where it's like, hey, absolutely, they deserve to be paid a living wage, live in conditions that, are acceptable, get health insurance and all this stuff. And I think there are economic realities where most of these teams are operating on margins where they're not like, it's not like they're hoarding a bunch of extra money, in like the way the club operates. Now, I can't speak to individual owners and like what their margins are like, because it could be that these are tax write-offs for some of the owners in USL. But I think it's no secret that when these clubs like open their doors, they're not exactly raking in cash. I mean, I would say Louisville is, I think, one of the few that I like know operates in the green. Most USL teams lose like a lot of money. So
I think I would say probably most football clubs in general are loss lead. You know what I mean? Like they're operating the red. So no, very well said.
They're all tax write-offs. The whole sport is a tax write-off.
Oh my God. I think you're spot on there. It's for better or worse, most likely worse, that is how it works in the US. Your health insurance usually comes through your job, and I think it's completely reasonable for the players to expect that. I mean, there's no beating around the bush, though. Healthcare, the premiums are outrageous. So I do... Oh, yeah. Economically, you're right to point that out as well. And if they want to... I think there might be some room to bargain on that of like, okay, we'll like split the premiums or something. Like that'll be part of your, your compensation,
Yeah.
which, for a lot of folks, and again, I by no means am I like employer gung ho or anything, but that is a form of compensation that a lot of people don't ever see on their pay stub because it's just covered when it's really like in the thousands of dollars a month. Which again is just points to how effed our system is. But for the meantime, it's what we have to work with, and I think that the players are right to expect that. But ultimately, though, like, are you hopeful that something will get done and we'll have a 2026 season kicking off in March?
I do. I think ultimately the owners, I don't know if they feel it right this second, but I do think USL as an entity and the owners that make it up will eventually see this as like a work stoppage. I think they should see as potentially existential for the league. Because in a world where there's a significant work stoppage, MLS Next Pro continues to operate under a CBA, a functioning CBA that already exists with the MLS Players Union and MLS. Players flock to, like, the talent from USL goes to MLS Next Pro, gets poached. Like, if there's any sort of significant work stoppage, they can get these guys in. And you have this sort of like drain of USL Championship sort of talent, plus people we've seen, I mean, firsthand in El Paso, like, I mean, people's attention is constantly being fought over. And if you're not sort of in people's face with, this is what we have going on and what we have to offer, and here's why you should come support us, and here's why you should be coming to games, it can like fade quite quickly. Like the interest can fade quite quickly. And I think if USL does not have the minerals for like to lose a season. Yeah. Like they don't have, to borrow from Stadio, they don't have the vitamins to lose a season and come out the other side like fine. Like, I do think that eventually all parties involved will see it as like potentially existential. I think what's happening right now, in my opinion, is this like brinksmanship of who's going to blink first, like who's going to cave, and both sides feel like it's going to be the other side. And I do think that there will be maybe more good faith bargaining over the next month that gets them closer to a deal. I don't know. I'm optimistic based on the business that some clubs are doing. I'd find it highly shocking if the conversations internally like weren't more positive, because between what Tampa Bay is up to and Lexington, like there are some clubs.
New Mexico United,
like they are splashing.
Yeah, they just signed a really good player.
That actually breaks my heart. That specific signing really upset me.
The lad from Tormenta, is that right? Yeah,
Tormenta, yeah, in League One. Niall Reed-Steven, I think is He was like a 25 goal involvement player last year.
Hate that.
yeah, he's unbelievable, and tricky winger, pacey, like the type of guy who has harmed Locomotive in the past.
Oh yeah, no, you're right. You're right to point out that it seems, anyway, on the face of it, that the clubs are kind of business as usual. So, yeah, we'll see, I guess.
We absolutely shall. But if there is a season, Locomotive will be led by Benny Feilhaber. I mean,
record
Junior
scratch.
Gonzalez. Yeah. Junior Gonzalez. So Junior Gonzalez announced as Locomotive's new manager, but Mika, I mean, this was not a straightforward manager announcement. It was there were rumors, there were false posts, there were cryptic graphics, there were all kinds of things.
Well, I suppose we should first lead with Wilmer Cabrera is no longer at the helm.
Yeah, I guess we did
just that little thing. Yeah, so he is gone, not returning. Thank you for what he's done for the club, but they've decided to move along. But yeah, I mean, Phil, can you take us through this kind of like farcical timeline that got us to our new boss?
Yeah, so on Monday, December 22nd, the club tweeted a graphic, which was a picture with big words over it that said, "We got him." And and so they tweet, "We got him." They tweet, "We got him." And there's two people walking in sort of the foreground of the picture with their backs to the camera of like, you don't know who this is. But it was quite clear
at the training ground.
At the training ground. And it was quite clear from the picture. I was like, I don't know who this is. Like, and that was what was clear to me, is like, there's no one jumping to mind in terms of like the candidates that are out there and candidates that have been linked to Locomotive. Which I guess I can, well, no, it's probably not fair to share now, but there were a couple of guys who it was rumored were maybe coming to Locomotive because they were like negotiating exits from their current clubs and all this sort of stuff. And so when Locomotive tweeted this, I was like, well, this isn't the guys that I've heard, so I don't know who this is. Well, it quickly came through. There was a rumor that it was Junior Gonzalez. That was the guy for Locomotive. That was out there in the rumor mill. On Friday, December 26th. So there's nothing from the 22nd to the 26th from Locomotive explaining this graphic at all. So they tease a new manager, they stay silent. On December 26th, the league posts an article doing this weird temperature thing, and there were rules. I'll spare everybody the details. It's not important. In the blurb about Locomotive, and I will shout out Christian specifically because he was the one who sent the screenshot of like reading this league article. In the blurb about Locomotive, it said they will be led by new boss Benny Feilhaber, who had recently, obviously, for anyone who doesn't know Benny Feilhaber, former U.S. men's national team international, had recently coached. He took over Oakland Roots midway through last season, got them sort of back to some level of respectability, and was not renewed because Oakland Roots, for anyone who's not seen, Ryan Martin, who was the manager of Loudoun, has been brought in to Oakland and is also a bunch of Loudoun players are following, but that's a whole other thing. So it's anyways, he's being replaced. So Feilhaber's out of a job. And so it was like Benny Feilhaber's at Locomotive. So we tweeted, well, I guess El Paso Locomotive is hiring Benny Feilhaber, and the league leaked it in this article, like just in the body of this article. What followed was a bunch of people being like, I don't know if this is accurate. I heard rumors from like my end that like, yeah, I don't know if this is even true. And then the league amends the article, and Locomotive, in response to this like league-wide sort of social media moment in which like a bunch of people are looking to a Locomotive of like, oh, did they hire Feilhaber? What's going on? Is this like, this leak is kind of crazy, whatever. Locomotive, in response to that, because obviously you would expect a response, does nothing. And so it's complete radio silence. Like there's nothing out there. They don't make any sort of statement. And there were a couple of things out there about, oh, well, the timing of Junior Gonzalez's contract and all this sort of stuff. But what was interesting is that LAFC 2, where Junior Gonzalez had last been, he was coaching in MLS Next Pro. They had already announced his departure. That they thanked him for his service, and they had already announced it. So it wasn't like there's going to be any issues with that. Because there were some people who were saying like, well, maybe his contract doesn't end till the end of the year and they can't announce it until the first type deal, like legally speaking. Well, that wasn't true, because on Monday, the 29th, Locomotive announces Junior Gonzalez as the new manager, having the only address of the Feilhaber thing that ever came through was someone within the club talked to Duke Keith, the voice of Locomotive, and was like, and confirmed that it wasn't going to be Feilhaber and that there would be an announcement on the 29th. They announced Junior Gonzalez. And I think in a way to soften the whole like mess, also announced the signing of Rubio Rubin like the same day, to try to like get as much good stuff out there as possible. This to me was like, I understand that there are complexities around hiring, contracts, announcements, press, all this sort of stuff. When the Feilhaber leak happened, to me, there's no excuse for saying nothing. Like, I understand if you want to be coy about it, if you want to be like, if you want to joke,
right,
post memes, whatever, but do something. Because the idea of like, hey, we know that this leak is false, but we're just going to act like this isn't happening, when it's sort of the only attention the club has gotten from the broader league media. Mm-hmm. In any significant way, like, and I mean both in a like social media sense and like league figures were interacting with our posts about this, who typically don't. To me, I just don't understand the club's thinking in, hey, this is all going on and we're just gonna like let it happen, and let people speculate and let people like go wild, because we know in a couple of days we're announcing a different coach. I just don't get why they didn't do something to calm the overall vibe. And to me, that's what more so concerned me about this whole saga, versus any of the complexities. It's like, this is something that Locomotive has, like, they have priors when it comes to trying to act like something's not a problem.
That's what gets me about it.
And that's why I didn't like that they tried to act like nothing was happening.
Yeah, and I do have some sympathy for Locomotive, because it's like the literal league caused this, right? And it's like, that is like
that is tough.
But at the same time, it's also like, well, now you, unfortunately, like, you have the choice of like taking control of the narrative. And I think like a cheeky little like, all will be revealed in due time, like some joke, something would have been better than nothing, just because I think it's just giving disorganized. You know what I mean? Like, if you are operating on a plane where the league that sanctions your club that you play in thinks that you're hiring someone that you're not, there's some level of disorganization there that is now being revealed to everyone. And Locomotive already have that reputation, and they have priors, as you said. And so that's what I didn't like about it, is like, okay, it's not Benny, that's fine, but like the fact that the literal league is saying this and you're saying nothing is crazy. And you know, the league ended up being wrong, but they got that from somewhere, surely. So, and maybe they weren't wrong. Maybe they were just, you know, maybe something changed. I don't know.
Right.
But either way, like it is unfortunate that like someone else started the narrative, but you could have taken control of it. And just, you know, a little cheeky joke, like, you know, good things come to those who wait. Something, I don't know. Just to show that like you're in control and like don't worry about it, you know?
Any sort of meme. What was the year? Do you am I misremembering? Wasn't there a year where at the Oscars somebody announced the wrong person as winning like best picture?
Oh
or
yeah,
best
like best picture, like something big. Yeah.
Something huge where they just straight up said the wrong one and then had to be like, oh, actually, it's this. Like, just do that. Right, where it's like,
you don't have to slap Chris Rock, but like you can do something else.
Exactly, like just do a meme. Yeah, I thought it was I thought it was a little bit clumsy in that, you know, they had a moment to sort of seize the attention of the league because everybody was like, "What's going on with this?" And it's like, you've got the spotlight, do something. When they didn't do anything, it was odd. And I think the idea that like, oh, well, there's just kind of like a lot going on and these things are very complicated and all this sort of stuff. It's like, yes. And no one's saying that you needed to like make the announcement or, you know, accelerate anything that you were already planning. I just find it really odd that like they were ready to make the announcement Monday the 29th and not ready to say anything Friday the 26th. Like that to me, it's like, how far away could you have possibly been? Right. And like, was it a DocuSign? Like, did somebody need to click a DocuSign and that was like that was what was the hurdle or whatever? Anyways, I just think there's a lot. There's a lot there. That being said, I do want to talk about Junior Gonzalez as the new incoming manager of Locomotive, because this is a guy that like we have experience with in the sense that like, you know, he was at RGV and then LA Galaxy 2. And specifically, now I don't think this was like on the podcast, but I do keep referencing it just because I find it so fascinating that he did eventually end up here. It's like we had a conversation, I think on the phone with Mark when he like talked to us about the fact that he was leaving.
Yeah.
After that playoff loss to Oakland in 2021, and we asked him who he would want his successor to be, and it was Junior Gonzalez. And so I just find it so odd that like, despite the fact that it's been a, you know, a broken road, that we did eventually get that guy who Mark said he would want. And a guy that built some very, very difficult to play LA Galaxy 2 teams that at least on one occasion we were on the end of an absolute hiding from.
Ooh, the 5-0. Yeah.
I think it was crazy. 5-0.
I think it was right after we clinched and we were like, unplug controller.
Absolutely smacked.
Yeah. No, I mean, and that's kind of, I don't want to keep harping on the Benny Feilhaber thing, but like that's also like a shame because I think Junior Gonzalez deserved more fanfare. Exactly. You know, for his announcement. But yeah, I am really intrigued to see what he can do and what he brings to the side. It seems like we can't avoid this like RGV like connection, whatever, it's fine. Like he was there in like 2017, so that's pretty far back now at this point. But yeah, I mean, Mark Lowry wanted him as his own successor, and it's been several years since he said that, and he's gained a lot more experience since then. So that is something that is comforting to me. Where I have a little bit of a question mark is just the fact that he's not always been the main man. And I think we've seen at our level, at the highest levels in all kinds of sports, like being the first mate and being the captain are completely different jobs. And some people adapt to that better than others. And so this, I think, will be his, I would say, I don't know if you would agree, Phil, I think this is his biggest job, like, technically speaking, like being the guy, for a major team. It's on him. The other thing that I will really be interested to see how it plays out is kind of the working relationship in like the footballing department of the club with Ray Sari as technical director. Do they have priors with each other? I mean, how is that going to work? Because Ray has been, a fixture at the club at this point, right? He's seen through many kind of phases of this Locomotive post Mark. And so I'm interested to see how that works, and who's really going to be the one taking the reins of like recruitment, talent ID, negotiations, etc. Because we know that kind of split of those jobs was an issue for folks in the past, most notably John Hutchinson, right? So to see how they work together is going to be very interesting. But yeah, I mean, you're right. He's coached some difficult to beat sides who definitely can give you a game. He's worked in organizations that are, win now types of teams. I mean, LAFC burst onto the scene when they came into MLS, and he was part of that organization. So I have no doubt that he's going to bring, like a winning spirit to this team. But it's been too long since we've been kind of like a serious proposition in the league. And so he's got a tough task ahead of him, on top of the fact that the squad is turning over like crazy yet again. And so Rubio Rubin is a nice start, don't get me wrong.
For sure.
But there's still a lot of holes to fill in. So interested to see how he can crack on. And I hope that we can get him on the show. We will try to do that. As always is our tradition. We'll try our best to see if he'd like to talk to us and kind of introduce himself to the hardcores that listen to this show. So
yeah, I am actually cautiously optimistic that we might we might regain some access to with some personnel changes that occurred. So I will say, I think overall I like the move. I agree with you that this is going to be his biggest test, in the sense that he's always either been the assistant or he's been the manager, like the manager of a reserve side.
Right.
And I do think the pressure that comes with managing a USL Championship team that is, its own organization and the top side and the main event. I do think that's something that he'll have to get to grips with. He's been exposed to a lot of, like, when you like look at the guys that he's been the assistant to, there's a lot of really respected names within both like USL and MLS, where, it's like he worked with John Hackworth in the USA youth national team system before he was he was Siggy Schmid's assistant manager, Guillermo Barros Scalotto, Dominic Kinnear and Ezra Hendrickson, like all guys who have big sort of pedigrees within the game and have been around and, managed MLS, all that sort of stuff.
Wilmer Cabrera, right?
Yes, actually at Chivas USA.
Yeah. So, I mean,
Wilmer's
coaching, a big name too. Let's be real.
Absolutely. Yeah. So all of that being said, we've had guys with pedigree who have not worked out. So like it is, it is not a guarantee of success, and it will take him like really putting his stamp on things. I do think the Rubio Rubin signing, if we could talk about that for a second. So Rubio Rubin joining from Charleston Battery, having spent last season there after he joined from Querétaro, I think, in Liga MX. So he joined Charleston. It was a very, very big hype signing. I think from what I had heard, El Paso was in the race at that time, which does make me think that this is a Ray Sari signing in the strictest sense, because I do think that we were in for him when he joined Charleston ultimately. I think we lost out just because Charleston was building, extremely strong roster that he felt like he could get some really good service in, and he ultimately was not favored by Ben Pierman in that Charleston setup. They had Kel Jennings, MD Myers, all these guys like up front, so he was somewhat limited on playing time. Not crazy, but he was a little bit limited on playing time. So Rubio Rubin coming over to Locomotive now. This is a very, very strong name at the beginning of a transfer window, or off season, however you want to classify this. But it does feel like it is a Sari guy versus, because we were in for him last off season by all accounts. It'll be interesting to see the remainder of the offseason if the targets feel specifically Sari coded, I guess, if that makes sense, or if the influence of Junior starts to creep in, if we start to see guys from, well, I guess him and Sari have these LA Galaxy and LAFC connections too, because Sari, if I remember correctly, was involved with Lights at the time when they were an LAFC
yes,
affiliate.
Right.
So anyways, there could be some connections there. Maybe there will be some crossover, but it'll be interesting to see if there's any, if any of the signings start to feel maybe a little bit more Junior, or maybe Junior influenced, and we can see where that's all coming in. But for now, we have a little bit less to go on. That being said, Rubio Rubin as a signing and as a forward, a goal scorer. Thoughts on Rubio specifically joining outside of the context of the whole Junior Gonzalez thing?
Well, I mean, I think we've been crying out for this kind of a profile of striker ever since. My God, Solignac. Luis Solignac, ever since he left the club. I think we've been crying out for this kind of profile, as in terms of a kind of a taller guy, leads the line, nose for goal, and that less of that diminutive kind of tricky forward that we've had with kind of Amando Moreno, Frank Lopez to an extent, Christian Sorto to an extent. I mean, we've found ourselves with an actual number 9. Over 40 caps for Guatemala. That is nothing to scoff at. 13 goals as well for his nation. And his resume is really interesting. I mean, he started at Utrecht, as far as at the highest levels of the game in the Netherlands, which we know is a great place to ply your trade as a striker. And so he wasn't super prolific there or anything, but it's great experience. And he was in the Danish league for a little bit, and then went down to Mexico, and then finally found himself back in the U.S., where actually he grew up, even though he plays for Guatemala internationally. So that gives me also a little bit of, that gives me a good vibe, just because I'm hoping that means that he will settle at Locomotive quickly, because we know that's not always been the case with some of the bigger signings that we've made in the past that don't seem to settle as well as we would like. But he's been all over, and I think he just loves to play the game. And so I'm excited by that. Also, he spent a very decent chunk of time at the highest level in this country in MLS. So with Real Salt Lake, so I think that experience will only be a good thing for us. And yeah, I'm excited to see what he can do. And it's nice to just have this kind of traditional like striker that we can look to lead the line. But of course, the proof is in the pudding, and we have to see, what he can actually do in front of goal, because we need goals after Wilmer Cabrera Jr. Andy Cabrera has now left the club, and some of our other
For
signings
Charleston.
For Charleston, right? Right.
They basically swapped.
Right, and then Daniel Carter didn't. He even though he's chipped in with a couple, he didn't really work out on loan. Frank Lopez definitely did not work out. And so yeah, it's going to be a big job for him to become that leading man for us. So, but the resume is there, and I think that he could explode for us if he gets the service.
I will say, like, because people will probably glance at his, if you look at his stats overall, you'd be like, like, not a big like volume guy. In a lot of his seasons, he's like 4 years removed, or I guess now 5 years removed from the 2021 MLS season, where he had 8 goals, 6 assists across 34 games, which is, quite good record. And then from there, he's been like a little bit more spotty and all that stuff. The last time prior to this that he was at the USL Championship level, he, reappeared post-COVID at San Diego Loyal for 4 matches and scored 5 goals. He hit a hat trick against Phoenix, and then immediately went to Real Salt Lake because it was just like he got snapped up. And last season in the USL Championship, like not counting Jägermeister, or I guess now the Prinks Tires USL Cup, that's a whole other, and the US Open Cup, only counting his minutes in the league, he had 4 goals, 3 assists in just 724 minutes, which, I mean, when you think about like goal and an assist every 100 minutes, basically one a game, like that's one every, like just over 90. That's not bad. That's a pretty good return. And a lot of his minutes were coming like off the bench. So a lot of his goal involvements, like, one of his assists is in a 17-minute cameo against San Antonio, where it's like he's not getting tons of time. And actually 3 of his 4 goals came in substitute appearances. So it's like, if you give a guy like this the reins and like he's leading the line, how much of a difference does that make? It's sort of the, like, again, we talked about it a lot last season because of the struggles we were having at the beginning of the season scoring goals. But there's this chicken and egg of, I mean, I think if you put a guy like this in amongst what we've got, it's hard to see a world in which he's not scoring some. Like he's not going to be completely starved. So it does feel like a favorable situation to bring Rubio into. And I'm kind of glad that he's betting on himself a little bit, it feels like, in that I'm sure Charleston would have kept him around and he wasn't content to be like a bit player in a really good team. Like, he wants to be that guy, and we need someone who wants the ball, like, and wants to be the main character in these games, and take games by the scruff of the neck, so to speak.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's an exciting signing, but I don't know. I can't, if this wasn't your question, but I just can't go past like who's going to be playing in goal. that needs to be the next thing to drop, because I'm a big believer in building from the back, like not just in possession, but literally like on the roster. And losing Jamali Waite is huge. And so I'm just really waiting with bated breath to see what we do there and what solutions we find. I mean, I peeped John at USL Tactics free agency article, and I wasn't like super gassed on anyone available. Like, I've always thought like Siaha would come play for Locomotive at some point. I don't know why, he just feels Locomotive coded, but like,
yeah.
I don't know. I mean, he was at Monterey, which our new GM just came from there, so I don't know. But
yeah.
Anyway.
Their new starting keeper from last season is off to Riverhounds in a Jamali Waite connection, Nico Campuzano. It was announced today that he is off to Riverhounds from Monterey Bay, so we did not get their guy there. There's a couple of guys kicking around League One still. I'm actually kind of surprised that there was this whole saga with Sean Lewis, where Sean Lewis, who long time admired goalkeeper of the pod, Sean Lewis.
Oh my God, yeah.
Who he went to One Knox last season, wins League One with One Knox, and then is sort of unceremoniously not renewed by the club, and Tormenta snapped him up, oddly enough. Where I was thinking, like, surely a championship side will be back in for Sean Lewis, like having, but I guess, I don't know, people maybe put more into the One Knox defense than Sean Lewis. But you mentioned goalkeeper. I think like it is it's a massive hole. Not to mention the fact that Jamali Waite not only leaving, but going to play for Dom Casciato's Tampa Bay Rowdies. So that
hurts.
that's a tough one. A lot of Locomotive connections there. I would say, when you look at the depth chart of what we've got, the returning players, there is a decent amount, but when you look at the guys who are still here, it's like, you mentioned goalkeeper Seb Moramora. He played 750 minutes last year, like because of Jamali's international caps. But so he played a decent amount, but not anywhere near, like a full season of top level goalkeeping.
And he was actually
amongst
like decent for a second choice. So yeah,
for sure. But amongst the guys that are sticking around, like, I mean, Noah Dolenmeyer somehow is like reviving his Locomotive career, when that one like still kind of blows my mind. He spent obviously the back half of last season on loan at San Antonio, and he played just 160 minutes. Kenneth Hoban is one of the guys that was announced as returning. He played 1 minute the entire season. He's also 16. Emmy Rodriguez was announced as well, right? Or wait, actually, Emmy Rodriguez, I think, is gone, right? Yeah, he's off.
Is he? I don't remember.
And then Omar Mora was like one of 3 announced, returning forwards, and he did not play in the league. Like he played in the Open Cup game against New Mexico, I think. So when you look across this, like, there's just a lot of gaps, and I would say particularly central midfield, we feel significantly light. Goalkeeper, we definitely feel
Frank
light.
Daroma, one of our best players last season, leaving.
Hey, listen, that's one I don't understand it. I don't know if it was like a money thing or what. But on, pure form, there's no way that you don't bring Daroma back, given what he did last season in midfield. And then, you look at some of this too, and you're like, well, we really only have one senior left back because that's Ricky Ruiz. Because Gabby Torres, despite the fact that, yeah, he's a left back on paper, he actually played like central midfield most of the season. And then we're light in central midfield, which the club did sign Carl Sante. I don't know
if
how
you're
to pronounce
nasty.
it.
Sante if you're nasty. Surely it's Sante. I don't know.
Sante.
Yeah.
So they signed Sante, and he came from Phoenix, which on paper, again, that's a, you know, and even I tweeted about this because it's a pet peeve of mine, but on paper, he's a midfielder because that's like sort of how he's historically been listed and all this sort of stuff. But in reality, he played like 75% of his minutes for Phoenix last year came at center back in a back three, which I'm like, which are you signing him for? Like, are you signing him to play midfield, or are you signing it because because
we already have Coffee Tomasi if you want to do that.
That's what I'm saying. Like, we already have that. And like, if we're signing, like, this team actually in the strict, like, if you're going to rank stuff we don't need center backs like urgently. I would be happy to have quality at center back, like bring in additional quality. Totally do your thing. If we're bringing in, and like we did this with Bolu Akinyode as well, where we brought him in, it was like, oh, he's a 6, he's a destroyer, he's going to play in the 6. He played center back. Like, we just like stick him in the back. So I'm like, just don't like what is he actually going to do? And we need central midfielders, because if we have just Calvillo and Coronado, and Gabby Torres ? Like, we need more meat in midfield. Just straight up, we just need more bodies, and quality. Like, we need like top, like elite. And that's, I think this is where I'm going with all of this, is like, you lose Jamali Waite, you lose Frank DeRoma, you lose Andy Cabrera, Christian Sordo. Like, it's not, and this is where the Rubio Rubin signing is like, it feels pretty good in the sense that it's like, yes, that is like the caliber, but it's like, we need Rubio Rubins at every position. Like, we need top level guys at every position, because the guys that we have, and I'm not like shitting on them, they're very good players in a lot of areas, but we do need, like, we should be targeting elite guys. And unfortunately, like, Dom Casciato signed most of them already, but that's we should be in for the
bomb noise.
We should be in for the top level free agents, like, because that's what the squad needs. We need people like at the top level, like not necessarily the like squad guys,
players. Yes, sense. Exactly. No, we need, I mean, if I could bring it to a place of like positivity, keeping Gabby Torres is huge. Because he played massive. Over 2,200 minutes for us, 4 goals, 7 assists. His best position was on the pitch. Wherever he wanted to be, his best position
was playing footballer.
Yeah. So I'm happy that we were able to keep him on board, because I think he's crucial. Amando Moreno, the numbers were good, but I think I think he could have done even more. And even though he had like 14 goal involvements, I think with the volume of like chances he gets, he could have done more. And so if he can build on that, have a good rest this offseason, and then go in fresh and start to build those relationships again with new players, then great. The continuity in midfield is good, but you're absolutely right. We need like at least one like elite signing, if not 2 there. And, we just got done saying, like, we don't necessarily need squad players, but, like, Nick Ross is a free agent. So if we do want, like, a clubhouse guy, like, you might as well make it him. Anyway, Yeah, no, I completely take your point of like the floor of the squad needs to be brought up. Um and we have to do that with more than just, with all due respect to Carl Sante. I think he's a good player, but and it's only January. It's January 2nd as we're speaking about this, so there's a lot more business to be done. And the January transfer window is open elsewhere, like in Europe and whatnot. So that might bear fruit or accelerate some deals. Who knows? But yeah, I think the biggest needs obviously are a goalkeeper and in midfield in the engine room. Because yeah, Calvillo and Coronado, and then like Gabi Torres at a stretch is not enough. It's just simply not enough.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Well, when you think about the fact that, because I would say Coronado's minutes were like were more limited last year, and he still played like over 1,400 minutes. And Calvillo played, as we've gotten used to, like he played basically the entire season.
Yeah, like you don't really bench the captain.
No, and that's a lot of workload. Like that's just a lot of like how many 24 2,500 minute seasons are we gonna like continue to expect Eric Calvillo to do?
Right.
And so now the amount of Moreno point, I think it's worth mentioning that yes, like his output last season was definitely better, and like a big bounce back from the like very down 2024 that he had, where it was like kind of a false start to his Locomotive career, having joined from New Mexico. And when you consider that like goals wise, he finished level with Andy Cabrera when Andy missed a bunch of time. It's like
true.
There's like a consistency issue, I think, almost. And the reality is that like these guys weren't scoring at the same time, which is why at the end of the season you feel kind of good about Locomotive's like goal output and not good game to game. It was like only one of them was ever scoring. So yeah, I'm hoping that like injecting some fresh blood into the attack with Rubin and any subsequent signings, I do think like there is still significant like attacker. We only have 4 senior attackers, and we play and Junior Gonzalez, like crucially, we didn't mention this. He's played like a 4-3-3 his entire managerial life. And if we have 4 senior
if that's
attackers,
the case, then like our squad is currently not built for that.
Exactly.
Like, at all.
That's the other part. Like we need a lot more midfielders and a lot more attackers if that's how we're going to play. Because we are a team of center backs at the moment. And
wing backs. Yeah.
Now the Carl Sante signing could make a lot of sense if you're going to play a traditional 4-3-3, because I would say neither Calvillo nor Coronado are a 6. So if you're signing Sante as like, hey, I'm playing a 6 in a 4-3-3, that makes sense to me. And
but at the same time, neither of them are a 10. So it's like, does he use 2 8s? Well, yeah. Does he use an 8 and a 10? Like, it's
we did.
It's gonna be interesting.
Yeah, no, it will be interesting to see how it actually shapes up. I think cutting through all of the, because there's obviously tons of potential variables and all this sort of stuff. I think the key for Locomotive this year is avoiding having to do this again, right? Like the key is, can we, without any sort of like, is this the long-term plan, or is this the guy, or is this not the guy? Like, can we navigate a season in which there is continuity in the roster for the coach to implement a tactic that has continuity from one season to the other? Because I would argue that we literally haven't had that since 2020 to 2021. Like we haven't had continuity in the tactic or the manager or whatever. Like we've had some sort of upheaval basically every offseason since that one. And that was our best season. So to me, I do think that this season is a little bit about, it's obviously like trying to maintain and like get into the playoffs again, all that sort of stuff. But to me, like each year we're staring down the barrel in January of like, what is this team gonna look like and who are we gonna get? And then it's like, if only they had a full preseason together, and if only, like, all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
And it just that's the sort of thing that it's like, we really need to, like, we need 2026 to set us up for like a big 2027. Not to say that this year is a wash, but just to say that, like, we haven't successfully navigated it like in a long time. So ideal season is we successfully navigate it and still have the same coach and like a bulk of players as we did at the beginning of the season into next.
Yeah, I think that's right. I mean, I'm not saying like this is like necessarily like a total rebuild year, but I mean, in a way, kind of. I don't know. I mean,
a lot of change. A lot of change at the club.
For sure. I mean, should we get on to the next bit of change upstairs?
Yeah, I think we'd be remiss not to talk about it. And I know it's like late in the game, podcast lengthwise, but it was announced far earlier in the offseason that Andrew Forrest was going to no longer be the business general manager, I guess is what his like actual title was. And it was never exactly clear whether it was like a mutual decision or if it was Forrest's decision or the club's decision. But he departed and the club hired Mike DiGiulio, who was at Monterey Bay, as we kind of hinted at earlier. And he was the GM there. And he has been appointed as the president and general manager of El Paso Locomotive. So he is like reports direct to Alan Ledford as the president of Mountain Star Sports Group, and has control of the front office and I guess Locomotive as a whole, essentially. So Mike DiGiulio coming in as the guy. I think the questions we got, because initially there was obviously a lot of reaction around the fact that, I think Andrew Forrest has been a visible GM in many ways, in that he has been sort of a public face for a lot of the different media opportunities and marketing opportunities and things like that for the club. And I think it would be dishonest for us to say that we didn't have like our own sort of run-ins, I guess, like in the strictest sense, with how Andrew managed sort of both the media relations side and like how he managed the club's public image. And all of that being said, like it's not to say that anyone's like happy to see anybody, if it was like a firing or something like that, like nobody's ever advocating for like people to just actively lose their jobs. And my hope in that, having this like sort of fresh approach, is that we would have a Locomotive. And I think this is why we were talking about the whole Junior Gonzalez, Benny Feilhaber thing being a little bit disheartening, is the hope is that the change leads to a Locomotive that is a bit more transparent, a bit more, friendly to the media. And maybe a little bit more willing to have sort of the honest conversation that people are having, whether it's fans, us, whoever, like talking about certain stuff, be willing to engage in that like honest conversation in good faith, in the interest of Locomotive continuing to be like a valuable community asset, and a valuable like and cherished sort of part of El Paso, versus what at times felt like a more insular and maybe almost like siege mentality sort of like organization. I don't know if I'm being like overly unkind to Andrew in the characterization, but I just like, I think the reality is that we're hoping the change can lead to some of the opacity around Locomotive maybe fading away a bit, and their handling of some of these situations being a bit more proactive, versus how Andrew like chose to interact in some of these situations.
Yeah, I think that it's not. I think it's not dishonest to say that there were many that were wanting to see a change at that position, especially as results continue to not be good. And you know how much of that was on Andrew's shoulders. We could debate about that, but I think a lot of it, some of it was, of course. And I think it was time for a change. I might be misremembering, but I thought it was put out there that he wanted to move closer to family, and that's fair enough. So perhaps it was a mutual thing, but either way, I think it was time. I think there might have been like a staleness at front office level in terms of like new ideas. What you said about how they handle kind of like the public image of the club and the PR and media relations, fan relations, I think has really, to be honest, gone downhill a lot. And you see fans say that. I mean, that's, granted our audience is more of like the diehards, of course, but that's what we're exposed to, and we know that a lot of them were not happy with the job that Andrew was doing. So I think that at least for those folks, they'll probably be heartened to see a new face in that job. I'll be honest, I don't know a whole lot about Mike DiGiulio. Of course, he comes to us from Monterey Bay, who on the pitch have not done the business. Like, let's be honest, right? And that's ultimately what you're judged on in this business, and he'll know that better than anyone. It's about results. And sure, he'll be taking over the mantle from Andrew from a business development perspective, but you are, I would argue, a better product to sell when you are winning, right? And so that's the onus is going to be on him in that sense too, in the football league sense. So it's on him and Ray Sari and Junior Gonzalez to come to some kind of understanding about how they're going to move this club forward, because there's just been the standards have been far below. Like, it's just been not good enough. And so that kind of concerns me a little bit, just that he's not, let's face it, he's not coming from a club that was successful on the pitch. And so obviously there's no telling what he'll do with us. I mean, presumably he has a bigger remit here and possibly like more support financially than he might have had in Monterey Bay. I'm not sure, but that does concern me just a little bit. And just, some of the like reputational things that I've heard is kind of a mixed bag. But of course we can only give him a chance and see what he'll do. And he has, I feel comfortable saying he has reached out to us and wants to have a conversation with us. So I'm sure he's excited to introduce himself to the fans in that sense. So again, another one we'll try to get on the show for you all. But yeah, it's just a lot of change. And, a lot of people have been asking for this change. So I think that now that it's here, we have to kind of, take it in stride and see and give these people a chance and see what they could do.
I think I speak for a bulk of the fan base too, where Mike, I don't know exactly where your limits are in terms of what hiring and other decisions you have. Please get someone permanent in the booth with Duke. Duke does an incredible job. But there are weeks where he's just out there alone and unafraid, and he deserves to have an engaging person there next to him in the booth to call the games with. And
Holly was good. She's just busy.
Holly's fantastic, and that's the thing. Like, we got to find somebody who is that great combination of good and available.
The
Which,
best ability is availability. Type
yeah,
beat.
at times. Let's not get too crazy. But no, I think yeah, he's got some opportunity. I would say, for Mike, like the things that the real, if I boiled Andrew Forrest's reign down to sort of one primary thing, or I guess two, the fan relationship is certainly, like, if you're gonna be the face, like there's gonna be a certain amount of fan interaction, potential animosity, all that sort of stuff. That aside, like, for me, the tough thing about this position is that you are the one who's ultimately going to make like hiring and firing decisions, about manager, technical director, like these big jobs, like you mentioned, and he has to get to grips with Junior and Ray and how they run things. And I think he can't occupy the same space that Andrew tried to, which to me was, well, that's not my, like, when they were winning, he was happy to talk about how great it's going and like how, oh yeah, like Wilmer's doing this and Ray's doing this and it's amazing and like we're really plugged in and can you believe what X player is up to and blah blah blah. When it was going bad, it was like nobody pay attention to what is going on, like
Right.
and I think, like, if the GM position is a layer of accountability for the technical staff, like, that's good. If the GM position is a way to avoid accountability for what's going on the pitch because it's other people's job, I think that's where people get dissatisfied. When it's like, well, that's not really my thing. That's like the coach's job to identify, to like play the team, and it's the technical director's job to find the players. If it's used as a shield, that's when people get disillusioned, in my opinion. Like, I think if people are like, feel like you're taking accountability and that you're taking it seriously and that you're listening to them and that you're like creating a good environment for people to work in, that to me is where you can like get the wins. If you're constantly doing this sort of like, firefighting, I guess, for lack of a better term, where you're like trying to keep people from saying certain things about the team or whatever, like if you're constantly sort of suppressing, that is where the negative comes in. And if you're not taking accountability for what's going on the field, like when people are asking, I think that again is just like people are going to bristle against that, and that unfortunately is something that Andrew's tenure had, where it was like there were some really, really bad years in there. And it never felt like there was accountability out of the true front office. And I think, if Mike's coming in, if he can do so in a way that, shows that he's here to build a relationship with the fans, like make sure that the club reconnects with the community, gives a little bit of like transparency and stuff like that, then I think that will get him off on the right foot. But yeah, a lot changing, a lot happening, and all just in time for 2026, which, as we talked about, a lot of teams making some pretty big moves, and a lot of teams really trying to position themselves as contenders. So I do think that Locomotive, like if they want to be up in that conversation towards the top of the league, they do have a little bit of work to do. And, Mike and Junior and everybody kind of has to hit the ground running here.
Yeah. I mean, it's a huge task for all of those involved. I feel like we say this every season, but no, it really is. And they all just have to like find some kind of like symbiosis like immediately, if we're to challenge for anything on the pitch this season. And yeah, it's gonna be. I think this season will really be about like observing and seeing like how all these new structures play out. Because I mean, we've been through very many manager changes at this point, but I think changing your GM is a pretty big thing, and that can set the tone for the entire front office. Because let's be honest, Alan Ledford manages the club from a desk in California, so it's Mike DiGiulio who's going to be on the ground, kind of doing the day to day. So yeah, and I don't know. Just backing up a little bit to Junior Gonzalez, being that he did work for Wilmer, I'm hoping that in interviewing for the job, he consulted with Wilmer about it, and if he felt like he could take the job, then I would assume that meant that Wilmer said it was a good place for him to kind of cut his teeth as the main man. So, and I say cut his teeth, but at the same time, like we are looking to be competitive. So, you know, whether this is like thought of as a stepping stone for him or not, the fans certainly won't think of it that way. We want to get back to winning ways as soon as possible. So yeah, just a big job for everyone involved. And we'll have to see that how that goes.
Yeah, it'll be a very, very big season. A lot to keep an eye on, and you know, this is our way of kicking it off, but it won't be long before we have preseason stuff to talk about. There will be obviously new signings. There's going to be hopefully a CBA in the near future, so there will be plenty to talk about on our road into 2026. But yeah, I think that about does it for us here today at Seriously Loco. And yeah, follow us on all the podcast platforms, download, subscribe, whatever the platform allows. Rate us if you can, and we'll be back next time to talk more Locomotive. But until then, stay loco.